welcome again, another episode, Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Liz McGee, and I'm going to continue on in a series talking about the Tree of Life and its theological implications for understanding the cosmology of the universe, the world that Elohim made that we inhabit. So I hope, if you're new to my channel, subscribe. I have numerous playlists on a lot of different angles of my topic today that you could really study more deeply. I have a playlist on angels. I have a playlist on mystical, the esoteric mystical understandings that are deep in the word, hidden, the sod level. And I have a lot on the texts. Obviously, I read very deeply outside, quote unquote, the canon in order to get greater understanding of what the canon is trying to tell us. So all that being said, last week, I don't know, I'm not a high-tech with this, but I kept disappearing. I won't disappear today, I promise. Last week, the video I just uploaded on the beginning of fleshing out the cosmology of HaShem, I was disappearing all over the place. I had a lot of this background distraction going on. So bear with me. So I want to say, now what I am, I am just trying to enter into dialogue with people who are tracking all of this incredible download of information. It's an exciting time we live in. But I was drawn back into sort of a, reading, understanding, trying to figure out what people are saying about this concept of, the flat earth. Are we on a spinning ball or a flat earth? And I got very frustrated very fast, only in the sense because I know this for a fact, because I really believe we all know in part and prophesy in part. I don't have this whole thing figured out. There's whole parts of it that I don't even touch. But I do know the esoteric understanding a lot of these words. And it is in the deeper esoteric levels that we're going to find the deep meat, the understanding that we need to understand Torah. And to be able truly, is to answer back to the gainsayers, those who are trying to make fun of the Bible, or who are trying to say it has nothing to say that's relevant, all right? You have to have, understand a lot of its deeper meanings. And a lot of the word, and I know this for a fact now, a lot of the words that are being used and thrown out there in the flat earth community is not, it's the total picture. It is a fundamentalist understanding. Now, I did a series a couple months ago on fundamentalism. I forget what I called it, but basically in terms of the male and the female. Okay, it's a huge concept, especially it's being unpacked today. Is there a female and a masculine essence to the Godhead? And does our text back that up? Well, it does. But you cannot, if you're fundamentalist about it and think this is really just talking about gender, men and women in the physical or in their gender part, a lot of the application, what happens to us is we start applying these deeper meanings on a surface level. And so women all of a sudden are second-class citizens, and they, just look at history, all right? It comes from a flawed understanding. I have a couple quotes here. So hear me out, all right? I'm just trying to add to the dialogue what I know and enlarge all of us together. Hopefully we're in this together to enlarge our understanding. There's a Proverbs 18:12 says that before his downfall, a man's heart is proud, but humility comes before honor. It says that he who answers a matter before he hears it, this is folly and disgrace. So in other words, I do have something to say, and I think before people just sort of summarily dismiss it, hear it out, all right? Because, we're told wisdom is the principal thing. We're to get wisdom. And this is a quote here. I just have this from a couple of jumping off things I want to say here. The most important thing I want to say is that it is in Hebrew. By deeply beginning to understand our text from the Hebrew, all right? Not the I don't care how many extra biblical texts you read, but if you could keep reading them in English, so to speak, in the translations, you're never going to really get down to the esoteric. It's really a lot of, because it is couched in the Hebrew. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, I believe that Hebrew is the language of creation. I believe the way it is set up, the letters, the cantillation points, the context, the way they're put together, it's every jot and tittle. It's totally important. That's the jot and tittle of the thing. It's how these words are put together, and then how they're nuanced, how the vowel points change the meaning, where it's put in the. There's just so many different ways. So it's an understanding. It's getting down to this now in the Hebrew. I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I don't pretend to be, but I can. I'm getting to where I can, recognize the letters, read the words, try to understand a lot of the theology that is behind these letters. Because unfortunately, as Gentile Christianity has developed over the last 1900 years, we have really lost our Hebrew roots. That's the whole point. So, this Rabbi Shalom Dover of Lubavitch has a great quote where he talks about wisdom is the glue, all right, of beauty. And we will use this word harmony. Now, I know he's referring to the tree of life, to Tifra, okay, but be that as it may. Because wisdom is the glue of beauty, wisdom meaning the ability to step back and see all of the picture, the past, and most important, the future to which all of this leads, to see the truth inside each thing. Without wisdom, there are only fragments. With wisdom, there is a whole, and there is peace between all the parts of that whole. See, and this is a fundamental principle why I'm getting wisdom, because as I've demonstrated in last week, or the video I just uploaded on the Tree of Life, explaining how this is set up in a dualistic binary way, that if you're just looking at the parts of it, you're never going to understand the holistic. And this is where we need theology, is the study of the whole, the holistic, all right, concepts. So be that as it may. I've been reading into the second book of Enoch. All right, because the secret, how do they call it? The secrets of the book of Enoch, right? We have the first book of Enoch that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Ethiopian canon, and so it proves to us its antiquity, that our past patriarch generations of sages and scholars, read it, believed in it, considered it highly scriptural and important, part of the writings. All right. Now, that another book, the Slavic book of Enoch, the second book of Enoch, or we'll call it the Secrets of the Book of Enoch, was found again in Slavic writings in the last, I believe, 150 years, and translated. And again, what they're finding, this is such an interesting piecemeal of information coming back to us. It is almost word for word for many portions of the Zohar. Now, you've heard me talk about the Zohar. The Zohar is a group of Jewish writings that contain the esoteric or the mystical, or the explanations for all the invisible world, so to speak, that we're constantly interfacing with. All right. So that's a very interesting statement to make. Here you have the Zohar, which is almost word for word coming out of the book, in the book of Enoch. The knowledge in there is totally, it's the same knowledge. Which proves my point, which I want to make again, that for anyone out there who is saying, especially if you're an Ephraimite teacher, there's really not that many Jews, they're more in the minority, that they're still quote unquote dishing Kabbalah. But if you're an Ephraimite teacher or following one of these who is trying to say that the mystical writings in the house of Judah are nothing that we should be messing with, you don't know what you're talking about. This is the meat of the word that we need. And it's obviously, you don't teach it to children. It's nothing that you're going to start teaching in your Sunday school. This is for very, people who have a good grasp of Torah. This is like the higher level understanding, like I always call it. Get out of grammar school, get into high school, get your PhD now, finally. So you really need to understand, we need the Zohar, we need these writings. The information in them is in many other extra biblical texts. because people took information with them to all of their different, the early Essenes, Nazarenes, early believers, early Jewish, Christian, whatever you want to call them, believers, took this information to all the earth, and they're writing what they know in their languages. So of course we're going to find different texts with similar information. Okay. But so in the second book of Enoch, but the reason why I think it's really important and why I got started in this, in trying to flush out again the cosmology, which is really a fancier word for saying, what can we know about the universes of Elohim that he has created, the seen and the unseen worlds, all right? Because I believe we're in the age, and I really do believe we're about ready to, have a paradigm shift, is principalities and powers and spirits of wickedness and living beings come at us front and center, and we have been really re-educated, retooled our minds that we will not understand it from a true Hebraic point of view, and there will be a great deception. In other words, the aliens are coming, the quote-unquote gods are coming back, the ascended master, whatever you're going to call them. And if you don't really know who they are, what this is, and the part of the storyline, so this is important information. And I want to, read a quote here. Let me see if I can find this really quick. Because in the secrets, in the book of the Secrets of Enoch, we'll call it that, it's very, people just have a hard time with it because, see, it's all written in code, it's all encrypted, so the words that the writer is using, they're like used in totally foreign ways to us. But it describes Enoch's journey into heaven, and he observes into the heavens, and he just gets to sort of see everything soup to nuts, all right? And it describes a very multidimensional reality of 10 heavens, and one of those dimensions is time, all right? And this is really interesting. And again, numbers are important. So we're always going to go back to the number 10, a decade, we're going to go like 7, because these words are always being pulled together and tools of classification and subsetting more information. So 3 is important, 7 is important, 10 is important, 12 is important, 70 is important, because it's like pulling a whole kind of group of knowledge and classifying it together in sort of a system. It's an easier way to try to keep track of all this. But anyways, this idea of 10 dimensions, and one of them being a dimension of time, which would be, the 4th day, when the sun, moon, and stars were created, which was a real finite tracking system for time. It's interesting that string theory, so my whole thing is, a lot of times, so much science today out there, quantum theory, quantum mechanics, this concept of string theory is really very biblical, is really what our text is telling us on the deeper esoteric levels. So this is good news. But see, we have to, it's our job at the elect to be able to say to them, and this is always my point, they always repackage the truth of the Bible, but they never give Elohim credit. All right, they never really put him at the top and say, yes, our Father Creator, our Creator Father. Anyways, my point is that these string theory opens the door to the possibility, even here, of other dimensions of reality. So finally, science is beginning to get to the place where they're going to have no place else to go. I've told you this. And this is going to be they're going to have no place else to go except into the reality that there are other dimensions, because the science, it's getting to that wall. That wall, that gate is getting very, very close. Where in order to get, you're going to have to go through it to get, to be able to explain what science is really now beginning to see. So the possibility of other dimensions, that these, because it has to do with quantum mechanics and the whole bit, protons, electrons, neutrons, what's going on the micro level, that the particles that they are seeing, they don't disappear from our reality. So they're not being destroyed. They're just simply entering another dimension. See, what we got to realize is, man, we are bouncing around in different dimensions constantly. And we just don't even know that. Elohim is inhabiting all of the dimensions simultaneously at all times. Nothing misses him. And we're just flipping around like these little, and we don't even realize it. Okay. So, what now? Let me try to explain how the cosmology is important. We need to get an understanding. So, you know, quote unquote, are these ancient aliens our progenitors? And I mean, this stuff is so false, but we've got to broaden and deepen our understanding. We cannot be so literal. And I started to flesh out in my, just previous to this upload will be one on the tree of life. Now, okay, a lot of information, and I am going to try very hard, because I have something that I do want to say. This would be, all right, this is my opinion, but it's based on huge study. I mean, I'm not like a novice or a newbie at this. I have a theory, like a third, let's just say Satan loves to, you know, create two sides, pit them against each other, which is what we have today in the flat earth community, and the, you know, the heliocentric, so let's call it the geocentric or the heliocentric models. And actually a third option, let's just try the third option, all right, which has been proposed at times. People have seen it, and I think it's very valid, and so that's what I'd like to propose, and that's what I've said, you know, before you, you know, make up your mind, hear me out, okay? Now, as I've said in a couple of places, let me lay this groundwork here for one important principle. So I've been talking to, there are 4 dimensions, okay? There's really 5, but there's 4 dimensions, and our Bible tells us this, and we need to now be taught this. This is the Hebraic understanding. In Isaiah 43:7, and we're talking about the other worlds, it's a very famous verse, and he talks about, there's 3 very important words. That's why I say that you got to look at these in the Hebrew. The Hebrew is so precise. It's crazy how precise it is, really. He talks about, I have created man. He says, I have formed you and I have made you. And these 3 words, made, formed, and created, follow the different worlds. So I was telling you the world of Asiyah, which is the first one, which is the word physicality, which is the world of physicality, which is the world in which our earth is. So you've got to have these understandings that what is, when it says that earth is fixed, what is it talking about? You know, how big is that word from its Hebraic understanding? You're not talking about the word Eretz, which is talking just about the dry land. We're talking about the word world. So, and then you have made of, is a word, it talks about the world of Asiyah, the world of physicality. Then you have this word, I have formed you, the word of Yetzirah, which is right after that, which is a world of formation. And this, let me say this, and this is why when I was going into the tree of life, this is such an important philosophy or theology, whatever, because the tree represents, it's just a really great Hebraic, it's a pictograph that takes these concepts and tries to put it before us visually, so it's easier to track these concepts. But then you have the last one, which is the world I have created, which is the word of Beriah, which is the world of creation, all right? And if you read your text closely, you have to find out what word is being used. You know, if the word formed is being used in a context, it's not an accident. You have to know the word formed is referring to this world of formation, which kind of corresponds to this world, the astral level, the psychological parts of us, you know, our mind and our emotions. All right, if you're talking about this world of Beriah, You're talking about the place of creation. You're talking about the original, like he knew us. We were in his mind's eye, so to speak. Always we before him. It says that all souls were before him. All right. And then he began a process of manifesting us. All right. And then you have this world made of, but the fourth level above it is the spiritual level, because it corresponds to, there's a spiritual level, there's an intellectual component, there's an emotional component to this thing, which equates to the soul, and then there's the physical, equates to the body, and there's different levels of soul life. And I've been through all this. So these are really important things to understand. But and they correspond to the tetragrammaton, Yah-He, Vav-He. So each one, the first Yah-He, but Yah refers to this highest level that is actually outside of the world of creation, which is referring to, the actual essence. This is the name. This is the highest level of Yahweh that anyone, and this is the spiritual level of the breath. This is where, for all intents and purposes, where we can begin to even get Elohim on our radar. But so that's all built into the text. That's all in the Hebrew. You can flush this all out. This is what the Zohar is about. This is what they do. They go deep. All right. So if you don't want to, fine, but don't come and tell me and use a physical or a literal level understanding to tell me something, a concept that I know is being used in its highest, like it's in the world of creation. It's talking about the world of formation. All right. So because in the tree of life, let me screen share a tree again so we can. Okay, before I do that, I want to say this piece first, okay? Because another way, like I said, we could kind of track this concept of different worlds, universes, dimensions, is really not a great, right, is to talk about the cosmology as it's being told to us in our text, like I said, in very precise ways, using the preposition. So when we talk about something, usually you will find out when the verse is referring to something that is in heaven, all right? It'll be in, which is the Hebrew, which is in heaven, all right? But when it talks about something that's in the dimension of earth, it'll say it's the Hebrew prepositional letters epi, which means upon the face of the earth. There's a surface. So heaven is referred to in heaven in the spheres. As I'm going to get into this, that heaven and earth, and the heavens are moving, we're not. But what does that mean? All right. So heaven is a spherical world that's constantly in motion. All right. The earth, epi, the first, it's a surface. It's very slow and dense materiality. It's full of energy. It's actually moving, but it's so slow and dense. We don't really notice it, all right? But epi would be upon the earth, upon the earth. Then you've got another whole category, which is called hypokato, which means under the earth. There's whole places our Bible text will tell us under the earth. I'm going to pull it out of 2nd Enoch, where he talks quite frankly about how the sun revolves and goes and rises under the heaven, and its course goes under the earth with the light of its rays incessantly. Thus again it goes down in the western gates and draws away its light, the greatness of its brightness, under the earth. While the sun goes round on wheels, under the earth, and stands 7 great hours, and it spends half its course under the earth. So there's a whole theology, there's a whole concept here of under the earth. And then you have a word epi, again, which refers to on the sea. A lot of times you'll see where it says, on the sea. Again, on is sort of like on the surface. If you're on something, you're on it. You're not below it, you're not above it. You're right on it. So we are on the earth. Our life form, if you're alive, you know, and you are on the earth, all right? Then you have versus a lot of entities we're told that they're like under the earth, okay? And then you have another one, N is used again in terms of in the sea. So you can have something that's on the surface of the sea, boats, there's life on the surface. You can have things that are in the sea. And these are all, and we're not, in these usages too, when we're talking, we're not talking about literally, you know, the oceans out there, the sea. The sea, there's a whole, you know, when he talks about, he separated the upper waters and the lower waters. And the sea, the lower waters is a lot of times referred to as the sea. So you can have, again, to recap on in can be things that are in heaven or in the sea, in them, okay? But then again, you can have things that are on the surface, on the earth, or on the sea and under. So this is another way that is really cluing us in to this world of dimensions is very real. And I'm telling you, our sages were not confused. They knew all about this stuff. So, because what I wanted to say, let me paint this, let's see, where should I go? Okay, so I was talking about in the tree of life, it's very important to have the concept. Things are broken down into groupings of things, triads, which means three. So there's an in the decade, all right? And this is something that's very important, like the number 10. This is why people, when they get into numbers, and they, because every Hebrew letter is a number, very important. They have very specific meanings. So the number 1 versus the number 2. But 10 is the decade. 10 is the number that is sort of the totality of the universe, is the 10 dimensions. That's what they say. There are 10 heavens. Enoch establishes this. A lot of times people think there's only 7 heavens, but that's because they group them in sort of this 3 and 10, 3 and 7. There are, and that's what I want to go into, especially is talking about the earth, how the heavens and the earth, grouped together as a number in a 7, so to speak. You know, you got so many, think about it, 7 stars, 7, is because there is a affinity for the theology of the 7 that is different when you lump them together and all that from the upper 3. And this has to do, so 7 and 3 is 10. The totality of those two kind of groupings will give us the totality of the decade of what I took is the tree of life, Adam, caveman, which I showed in the video just before this. This is the Kabbalistic tree of life, this understanding, all right? There's no accident here. This is all very thought through, very systematic. This is the way our text is kind of written and coded. But the upper 3, let me just talk about this from Genesis. And you know, I mean, again, this is an hour. I'm just trying to throw some stuff out there to whet people's appetite to just dig deeper. And when you talk about the upper 3, and I've been through this, you're talking about this concept that are outside the 7. So they're never influenced by the lower 7 in the sense they're above. This is our Abba Ima. This is Hokmah and Bina. This is Keter. This is the world of the Godhead. This is like the brains of the operation. This, you know, when Elohim sits above the circle of the earth, all right, I think that's what it is. He is totally outside of the lower 7 dimensions. He inhabits all of them. He moves up and down. He's not in a hole. You know, there's no wall or a gate or anything that's going to keep him out per se. But okay, I don't want to get too lost. I don't want myself to get lost in all this because I want to just try to keep this very kind of easy to pick up. But in Genesis, it talks about, or in the tree. All right, let me screen share this tree. See, here's a tree. Let's just look at this tree. See this, see these branches down here. And actually, this is kind of a great thing because it's almost lit up and electrical. And there's so much going on. And then you have the torso. All right, you have the tree. You have an outside with the bark. And this part we can really see. Then you have up here this whole area that's like all these leaves and millions of little branches, all right? And again, the tree of life has so many applications. I mean, people, their genealogy, you know, you take this concept of the tree of life. Who were your ancestors, your root system, and then, you know, branching out all this. But for our intents and purposes, we're using this as the cosmology of the world. But, in, you know, as above, so below. But the thing is, this thing is sort of backwards. In one sense, theology works like this. Well, let me just say this. This tree of life, that I said, it does, because I can see this in point of physicality, I mean, how I say this, represents the lower seven. Because actually, this tree, if you think about it even deeper, didn't poof out of nowhere. It was a seed, so to speak. It came from somewhere, but it was planted. What is outside of it is sunlight, because we know this, in order for things to grow, is soil, the soil that it's planted in. And what's the third thing? The soil, the sun, and the water. It has to have those things. If you read your first two verses of Genesis, okay, the first verse in the beginning, Yahweh made the heavens and the earth. Okay, well, that's your summary verse. That's sort of like what the whole storyline is about here. The second verse, and the earth was without form and void. Okay, so if you read those couple, you're going to find out that this concept, and I use the word soil, water, and light, but biblically, we are really referencing this concept. All right, before I say it, let me say one other thing, which you probably didn't know. If you were looking at this in the Hebrew, Bereshit is the first word of the Torah. Bereshit. That B, which is the letter Bet, is like way bigger, if you look at it, than the rest of the text, the rest of Bereshit. Okay? Now, there's no accident. That's the reason. Why did the sages, or why did the scribes every single time always make the Bet bigger than the rest of the word? Right? We're not even talking about a capitalization. We're talking about a deliberate enlargement. And this is one of the ways that they did it, you know, to draw attention that there's a lot. There's, you know, because like I said, Torah does not begin with Aleph, which is one. You know, even though we know that, you know, Hero Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Echad is one. Why does then Torah start with two? Bet, which numerically Aleph is one, Bet is two. I mean, there's a lot of deep information there, but two, because right from the get-go, Elohim is telling us that this whole construct, everything is made dualistically. All right, two. There are two sides to the coin. There's heavens and there's earth. This concept of two, of duality, is something that he established at the very beginning on every level. There's light and there's dark. I mean, this can just, you can do so many interplays with that concept. But the point is, I wanted to say this because in the tree of life, the concept, separatistically, what they're telling you is, once, if you look at this Keter, if you've ever seen these Kabbalistic, okay, I'm done with this. Let me just get back to, I don't have my Kabbalistic thing. All right, here, let's go here. Let me screen share this, okay? This is what I was telling you about the different worlds. It's how very systematic. Look at, but let me make this point. Chokmah and Bina, you have an immediate sense of duality, all right? And then you have, this gets into the left pillar, the right pillar, and then the middle pillar. There is a fundamental principle that has been established in the get-go in your first three verses of Genesis that is telling us this. And this information is really vital to understand, because I have always said this, once you get an archetype, once you establish a truth, an archetype, on the highest level, it's like a stamp. It can go on everything. All right, and so this is what I want to say. When we get this concept of the 3 and the 7 down, we understand it's a deliberate binary system. There is a left side and a right side, and there is a middle. And then what that information can tell us on every single level. All right. Now, I want to give you some equation, like in science. True science will completely back this principle up. But I guess this is what I wanted to say is, if you read Genesis, I believe it's 2 and 3 very closely, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth, and the spirit of Elohim hovered over the waters. I believe that's it. Right there in the verses, you have spirit, you have waters, and you have earth. All right, which is really 3 things, and I use this word earth in quotations because this is something the first thing I want to flesh out. The way it's using is, those are the 3 principal components. Their blending, their mixture, the way they come together is going to now form everything. It's an endless, it's a system. All right, so let me say it's a system. It says of a positive and a negative. So your right side's a positive, your left side's a negative. And you have a neutral, you have a middle point, you have a neutral. Even in science, they talk about the proton. On the right side, they have an electron. On the left side, and there is a point. There is the point with circle, but it's a point, it's a starting point, right? These things keep over and over affirming themselves. You have a positive, the plus sign. You could have a positive, you could have a negative, you could have a 0 in the middle. In all computer programs, you could have X's and Y's, and then you have, again, the point in the middle. All math comes from, all the formulas. So this principle is firmly established, and this principle is what it's telling us. And this is what they do as a technically, they take this classification system, and that's why you will find out so far when you get into a lot of the diagramming, and the right side is referred to as water, the left side is referred to as darkness. So I'm going to flush that out more in a minute. The middle is referred to as the breath. All right. This is another way of talking about 3. I mean, this is so way divided. Why would he have to say that Adonai Echad? There are many. In our body, it's still one unit, but it's made up of many parts. So this is where you have to really, even in the cosmology, there is so much depth of understanding of all the different parts, how they work together. And believe me, none of this has escaped our prophets, sages, Torah teachers. This is something they have known and they have carried forward, especially in the language and in the Hebrew. So, and there is this, and what's really interesting too, and how it really, because it gets, again, like I said, the right side, the left side, and the middle pillar, and this is where this gets into this whole concept, the middle pillar. So, because they have so many ways of designating relationship to these different, this decad kind of concept, and in this concept, like I said, you have a left side and right side, you have wave and particle. In every single way you look at it, it really does mirror itself. It really is sort of telling the same story, using different words and illustrating like a different part of this to kind of understand it. So in other words, on the electron side, on the negative side, on the Y side, on the and even in this whole quantum mechanic thing of electrons, neutrons, and protons, the electron is called a cloud. It's an energy cloud, and it surrounds the nucleus. So you could have in the middle, you would have a nucleus. You have the proton and the electron. So what I'm saying is, and this is the lower 7. So I'm probably losing everybody. But what I wanted to just try to say, even in the concept of the electron, the last thing I do want to say on this, there's always, you can take this concept, I guess what I'm saying is you can go as macro as you want and as micro, and it should totally be telling the same story, principles, the way it should be the total same. So when you have the sun, when you have the heavens, and you have a sun, and you have these, you've seen all these ancient diagrams, especially, and they'll have, whether they have geocentric or heliocentric, whether the Earth's in the middle, the sun's in the middle, for right now, it doesn't matter. They have all of these, all the other planets circling it, and they're all, but let me just say this now too, planets, the word planet is not in the Bible. That has nothing, that's sort of an artificial word, and this is part of the deceptions that's thrown at us. We think that these planets are really something, they're really not, all right? So we got to get back to what a biblical understanding is. And this, I think I really kind of fleshed out a little bit from Second Enoch, which I will get to. But the point is, the heavens is in this concept of this electron, this cloud, the sun and its luminaries that are revolving around each other. So what I'm saying, no matter how quantum, because you want to go tiny, you want to go totally subatomic, or do you want to, look up and understand what we can know about our heavens and the cycling that is going on up there, the orbits, the spheres of the planetary, use the word planet, of the luminaries, of the sun and the moon and the luminaries. All right. So there is built into this thing a wave particle duality. That's why Bereshit, Bet, is the first letter of Torah. This is something that's really has to be understood. This whole diagram, someone took all this information. Here are your four worlds. Asiyah, the world of action. Yetzirah, the world of formation. Bariah, the world of creation. And Absolute, which is the world of emanation. All right. And it's classified down. Asiyah refers to the body or solid, physicality. And it is also geographic. This is a really important thing to understand. West. All right. So when it talks about, from the West, believe me, people, and the first thing you have to understand, that's what I say, as you go up and down that tree of life, the middle pillar, you're going up and down. There is direction. All right. And so you have north, south, east, and west, and you have up and down. Those are all the descriptive words for kind of getting us around this whole thing geographically. So the West refers to the world of Asiyah, physicality. Yetzirah is the East, referring to the heart. All right. And Bariah is the North. All right. This is like creation, and it refers to water. And then you have Absolute, the world of fire. All right, plasma, which is also the ether, okay, and that's in the south. See, now, if we had these understandings, we are not geographically talking just on a physical earth plane. So, like I have tried to say, that the Gog and Magog, which is in the north, has nothing to do with Russia, has nothing to do with, like, you put it on a flat earth map and then you say we're the north. That's just not at all what our scribes are trying to tell us, our sages, all right? They're way deeper than this. They're in dimensions that, it's like, again, it's trying to explain a kindergartner who, quantum mechanics. You can't. There's too much information in between. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people trying to teach a lot of biblical texts and words and concepts, and they don't have a full depth. So this is a problem. But back to the north. North is a place, I think I fleshed this out a little bit in the upload I just did. In the sides of the north, all right? This is a geographic location on the Sephirotic tree that is above the quote-unquote, the dimension of the heavens. And dimensions, you could use the word heavens, of the sun, moon, and stars. It's a very important concept to have. Okay, so let me see if I kind of fleshed out what I wanted to say. So we have a 3 and a 7. In the 3, we have the upper triad, the upper water. So when he separated the waters above and the waters below, it refers to this 3-7 concept. The upper waters is, the world of absolute up here, it is spirit, it is, and nothing impure. Let me put it this way: Hasatan cannot. He has no access there. This is just not a domain. Nothing unclean, unholy, impure is ever going to. All right, that's good news. Because ultimately, Elohim isn't. You come down here to Brahe, referred to as the north or water, all these different things. So what I'm saying is there is a relationship that is already established with all of these words. And it talks about, refers the body, heart. So wherever you are, if you're psychological, and you're talking about the heart, or you're intellectual, you're talking about the mind. If you're talking about the spirit, if you're talking about the nephesh in us, the soul level. So, all right. So all of that is clearly established. Now, this is what I want to say, which just so let me tell you quick. I'm coming to the conclusion. So, because it talks about how there are 4 elements that, all right, so let me say the 4 dimensions, 4 worlds, whatever, is also related to 4 elements, all right? And it's related to earth, air, wind, and fire. I just have it here. You have the earth, you have air, you have water, and you have fire. This is a way the ancients classified these, and they called it the elements. They classified these states of being, let me see, and it's in 2 levels. So you can have the elements being referred to in the upper 3, which would be the winds of heaven, or you can have the 4 elements being referred to as the, let's say they call it the 4 corners, and that's talking about more in a sense of physicality, but or in the lower 7. So there's so much classification and sub-classification with all of these things. Now let me do one last thing before I get into my last thing. So all right, so this, I have to finish this. The earth, okay, so the right side, the side of blessing, you can say, is water, referred to. The left side is quote unquote, it was called darkness. But see, darkness doesn't mean in the purest sense of one way the word is used. It means it is devoid of, it's still unformed. So in other words, darkness was upon the face of the earth. It was still Tahu and Bahu. The earth, there was no formation yet. There was nothing yet. We just had darkness, pure, raw, unadulterated God, Elohim. He hadn't done anything with it yet. Okay, it was still Tahu Bahu, but it contains in itself, darkness contains within itself, everything that's needed, all right, to, get the ball rolling into formation. I don't know if I said that one correct, but anyways, okay, so you have in these elements, you have water. How do I say this? What did I say? You have earth, you have air, and you have water. All right, let's stick with the middle 2. Yetzari and Babi. You have air and water, and then you have fire and earth. How do I even say this? In the middle pillar, the reason the middle pillar is the most important part of this whole thing, and right in the middle, Tiferet, it's this kind of this Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, is the central command center for everything that goes on in the lower 7, and there's a direct up and down relationship, all right, between all the way at the top Keter, all the way at the bottom Malchut. The way they talk from the world of spirit to the world of physicality, it is sort of an up and down concept, and it's a dance. It blends in the right and the left. They're constantly working with each other. All right. Oh dear. Let's see. How do I do this? I need to get this. Oh, okay. Trying not to get myself lost. Okay. I think that Earth, let me put it, what I'm trying to say here is I do think light. See, I don't think there's an atom. I think, again, they're lying to us a little bit. there's a piece of the puzzle. You know, if the light of life, living waters, the breath of Elohim, these are all the important elements that come together to make us, our body, soul, and our spirit, all right? But I think that there's the potential for all physicality. Like when you go from Keter, from the total mind of Elohim, down to the total physicality, the boots on the ground, that's how it's referred to, the boots, feet, refers to total physicality. All the raw materials are in there. I think the earth, that's where the earth is in the middle pillar at the feet. I don't know if that makes sense. But if you go all the way to the top, it's pure light. It's pure raw high. L'chaim. It's pure light. It's pure Zoe life. It's pure light. It's pure total raw energy of Elohim. And then you have things, water, and then you have fire and the other elements that get blended together. It's just the way, because forget it. I know that I'm going to get a little lost, but what I'm just trying to say is these things are so deeply thought through and established, and they're so scientific on many levels. The archetype is absolutely true. You don't need to doubt it. You're never going to, but what I do think that their line is that they, this whole Higgs boson thing, they don't want to finally admit that they know that light is at the very center, in the very middle of this, and I have this whole thing, is light. This little tiny, the first point, the middle, the zero, this is the light. This is it. All right. I don't know if I did that really well. I can always come back to this stuff. But the other thing I gotta tell you is, even when you get into the lower seven, so in other words, I'm trying to say in the upper world, the upper waters, you have this concept of the three. I think that's where they get a little bit of the concept of the Christian Trinity, which is the Father, Son, and Holy. But that's a really core, that's really not Hebraic, right? Because Hebraic is all 10. You can't cut the head off, so to speak, and just, you have a body going around without a head. There is sort of this disconnect. I don't think most Christians have the deeper understanding that there is much more than just a trinity of three, all right? But there are 7 hells. Again, this gets into this concept of, the sun, and we're going under the earth. Where is the earth in this thing, all right? So this is where I'm coming to. But there are 7 hells. Our text will tell us. This is all very layered. This is part of what it's telling us. This is, Jacob's ladder. And there are 7 heavens. So we know there's 7 heavens, and I'm going to flesh that out in a minute. But there are 7 hells in terms of things that are under the earth. So in the geography and the cosmology, the best that I can understand it right now. So let's say this hole, this sphere, all right, this ball, which is not referring to the earth per se. Earth is just one part of this whole thing. It's the physicality of it, but we still have 3 other worlds. But it is contained in this concept. Adam came and he did make a creation. There is to Elohim, he is boundless, let's see. But his creation is still a creation. And we're going to know that there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. So we're kind of coming down the pike a little bit. This is a little bit lower in intellectual concept than the concept what they would call Ein Sof of the omnipotent, omnipresent, boundless, God, Elohim, all right? But where I think we are, the surface, we are on the surface of the earth. So as I said, there is that concept of epi, upon the earth, and they use the word face. Face refers to the surface on this, is in the middle here, all right? So let's put it, let me do this. So if we had 7 heavens up here, right? Because I told you 3. The 3 is at the right at the top, right? So we got 3 up here. But we do have, the Bible is, there really are 7 heavens, all right, that are very active. And there's a lot of information about them. But on the earth, let's just say that is the slice of the pie here. Are we, so I guess the question is the earth Like, are we a spinning ball in the middle of 7 planetary things? And, no, it's not what it's telling us. Seriously, we're on a dimension here, and then in here there are these 7 heavens. All right, there's 7 other levels that are going under the earth. So this is something that really needs to be, in my opinion, we need to understand what it means to be on the surface of the earth. It is so dense. Physicality here is so dense. It is so slow. It looks unmovable. No, we're not a spinning ball going faster than the sound of the speed of sound or any of that kind of stuff. No, the heavens are moving above us. There's a lot of stuff going on underneath us. Okay, and we are right here on the surface in our physicality. But that's just our physicality. As I said, there's an up and down to this thing. Our soul, our spirit, and our ultimate, the absolute part of us, there's a higher part of us than is going up and down. All right. And you could call this like the right pillar. Actually, you could call this the left pillar and the right pillar if you did it this way. All right. One of the things about dimension and the way this thing moves, it's really hard. Sometimes, the bottom is the top, the left, it's all very relational. Okay. So does this what our text tell us? That we really could be here? Because I want to get into this. So I said in the 7 hells, if you don't believe me, they're Hebrew words that are describing this. And actually the abyss, there was still a lot of the earth is still being in formation in a certain sense, the lower, because even you can prove in your text I think you can totally prove that the abyss was, well, let me put it, was not populated. The flood created this place, or populated this place of the abyss with the fallen angels, a lot of the demons, a lot of these different, the space was there, okay, but what its formation, what populated it, a lot of this has sort of been ongoing, all right, because a lot of the souls have gone down into the pit, down into the abyss. Now, many fallen angels are down in the abyss, or this one, this one, down in the abyss, all right, because you have these words in Hebrew. You have Sheol, Abaddon in, I believe it's the Greek. You have a pit of corruption, and I'm not even going to read the Hebrew words for it, but you have a cistern of sound. These are all things that, you have a place of clinging mud. You have a place of the gates of death. You have a place of oblivion. And you have a place of the lowest earth, or the abyss. All right, so there really our texts really truly are telling us in many deep levels of this whole under the earth world. And now we know this. Let me see if I can find this really crazy quote. This is a crazy quote. Over and over, the many instances of worlds in outer space noted in the Talmud, in the Zohar, and in the writings, there is a lot of reference to a hollow planet. Or now, take out the word planet. Hollow means unformed. I mean, it is. There was a lot of. Let me put it this way: in the foreknowledge of Elohim, he had to make a place to put those fallen angels, even before the whole incident happened in time, down the, all right, in physicality and in time, all right? So we have this space, this hollow, or things under the earth with multi-layered worlds existing right beneath our feet, all right? Now, all right, in fact, it is the case of as above, so below, echoing, see, in the Zohar, in the Kabbalah, they are giving us, what I'm trying to flesh out here is there's a unified field of theory of knowledge. It's unified at all. There is a very specific locked down understanding, all right, that we need to flush out, all right? This, and the keys to the kingdom are getting us there. Just as there are said to be 7 heavens, so too it is recorded that there are 7 netherworlds, one above the other, each inhabited by its own species. Indeed, one notable source is a 17th century Kabbalistic classic, Hesed LaAvraham by Rabbi Avraham Azulai, that tells us there are as many as 365 different species of living beings under the Earth's surface. Many, these are some of the stories that come to us. So don't think that all this mythology, these people are crazy. I just think they interfaced with this. Part of Hasatan's plan has sort of been to go underground so he could retell the story. And that's what but there are always 365 species of beings living under the Earth's surface. These are said to be some of them half human, half animal, two-headed, the centaurs. There's a lot of, and this is where mythology comes. There's a lot of stuff, all right? Some Yah created, some that are just hybrid mixes that got made in the war, so to speak, and they, that's where they are, and they will come under the judgment. So again, in the cosmology, you've got to have these different, the seven heavens and the seven hells, this thing, and where we are on the surface in physicality right now. And there's the three, the high heavens, the upper waters. All right, so let me now just, okay, that was just enough on that one. So yeah, we're living on a cross section, all right, and it's pretty dense. They know that energy is pretty slow. That's what makes it. All right, so I want to go to this because there was a guy in the 16th century, I believe. His name was Tycho Brahe. All right, he's very famous, and I think if you're a flat earther, probably you know his name. Because what I subscribe to is that now I really think in this that both are true. We don't need to have one or the other. We don't need to have this dualistic war going on one side or the other. We need the unified field of knowledge. We need to get wisdom to put all the parts together. All right. So it is sort of a geo-heliocentric model that's being told in our text. But I have to tell you this, and I have to read another quote here. This is from Rabbi Yosef Gikatalia. I don't know. I'm sorry, my pronunciation, you should know by now, is always bad. All right, now, before we begin explaining this, tell you that just as parts of the constellation are called eye or ear or hand or foot, all right? Constellation, and this gets into the whole Sephira thing I've seen, Yahweh doesn't really have a hand, but geographically, cosmology, you got to have placement. His hands, he does have hands. That's the best we can do to explain some of the processes, the things that are going on, all right? But they are not real eyes, ears, hands, or feet like we would have, all right? It's just a parabolic way of trying to get this information out there and be able to think about it. But they are only names, they're only symbols, and they're only abstractions. This is what theology and philosophy is. So too, you must know that above the constellations, there are entities. Again, all right, so I told you that there are many, and this is why we got to get this information. So when the quote-unquote ancient aliens are really, these are subterranean, these are beast entities, these are lower level species of living beings that are going to try to foist themselves on us, basically because all right, so that's just all part of the story. Anyways, let me go back to this. There are also entities, living entities, beings that are called water, fire, air, or earth. And Aristotle thought that these elements should bear any similarities to us. It said they are awesome heavenly pathways, which is the word they use, or emanations, or forces, or even talk about clouds. These are wavelengths. These whatever. There's so many ways to describe this. Should bear any similarity to us. But they are not like the earthly ones. He makes his messengers the winds, his ministers glowing fires. This is his angels. He has angels that are, they're ethereal wind beings. All right, this is all part of it. That they're ministers of fire, his glowing fire. There are angels of fire, of chastisement. Now, I've been through this in a little bit. You should listen to my playlist on the angels. all right, how these words are used. Don't ever think that we're being spoken of are actual wind and fire, but their names reflect the essence of their character. And this is why, you know, fire, I've been through a little of the passions, and then, you know, a lot of times it is our passions that needs to get chastised. This is why these words all really do relate to each other. Okay. Tycho Brahe in the 16th century, he gave us some of the most accurate calculations to have the motions of the heavenly bodies that had, you know, kind of even before sense. Much of modern astronomy is built upon his work. Now, he proposes, and I think that this can be pretty much, I think this is what the text is saying. All right, let's see if I can do this, and I'll try to end with this concept. You have the heavens and the earth, right? So we first of all have to say there is a duality there again. We're talking about two different things going on here. We have heavens and we have an earth. If the earth is a place of physicality, it's fixed, it's unmoving. In other words, its denseness is so thick, it's not moving anywhere near the speed or any of this stuff as the heavenly bodies are. All right, this is sort of, we're talking, you know, apples and oranges. All right. You know, and this is why I can say, once you get an architect, hey, my mouth can move 100 million times faster than my feet can. This is the whole point, you know. So my feet are part of physicality. My boots on the ground. I can think and talk 100 times faster than I could ever run. That is telling us something, all right, that's fitting into this whole concept. So now, in the geocentric model, it is the earth that is at the center of the universe, all right? And this is really true because the earth is, on the sixth day, Yah took everything that he had created. He had to get all the processes, he had to get all his armies and ducks in a row, everybody who was the living beings, and their worlds that they had to function in and do what he was telling them to do. He had to create all that before he made man. He made his Adam, okay? It's a very specific word. There's many living entities. There are angels, but they're not Adams, all right? Different classification of living beings. So that's why it was made on the sixth day, all right? The sun and the moon and the stars revolve around the earth. Now, and the other 5 planets revolve around the sun. Now, I'm talking about the heavens. The heavens, we're told, is made up of the sun and the moon, on greater light and lesser light, and luminaries. All right. Now, the planets, if we take out the word planet, we put in the word luminaries, and we put in the word elements. Okay. I want to show you from 2nd Enoch that this is what I think he is talking about. And these, in this case, revolve around the sun. All right? This is the heliocentric part of the equation. The heavens really do revolve around the sun. And this is where in Ezekiel, when you look up, this is where they're always making these charts of Gilgal, of circle, of sphere, of orbit, of movement. And I don't care how broad they are, how narrow, however, they're cycling. These luminaries do not just stay in one place. Well, there are some fixed stars, isn't it? There are fixed stars, but by and large, this whole thing that makes up the zodiac is moving. All right? And it's done that way deliberately. And that is heliocentric. All right? Now, the earth, on the other hand, and this cycle, this grouping, this classification of these things that are called the heavens, cycle around the earth, which is fixed and stationary, which in other words is a whole different dimension. It doesn't have to move at the speed of the heavenly bodies. It doesn't have to do any of the things that the heavenly bodies are doing. It's its own entity, its own dimension. When you use the word world, biblically, it's the word universe. So the universe of Asiyah, the universe of our physicality, is its own thing. It is influenced by the heaven. but this is where a lot of the confusion comes in. They want to lump our universe with the heavenly universes, and there is a distinction, okay? So the essential difference between the heavens, which includes, they use the word planets, but I'm going to call them the luminaries, and the earth. So motion is in the ethereal heaven. Immobility is in the heavy, you call it sluggish earth. This was a system that this guy, Tycho Brahe, figured out, and he said it violated neither the laws of physics nor the sacred writings. With stars located, okay, so this is really true, I think, that and it also mirrors a macro to a micro. So this is why a lot of times in the ancient hieroglyphics you will see, even I think there's a famous Sumerian text you always see, and it's got a picture of like a sun in the middle and all these little planetoid things kind of circling around it. Well, that was common knowledge. Enoch, 2 Enoch 11, it says, those men, which are angels, these are archangels, took me, Enoch, and led me up to the fourth heaven. All right, this whole world of the sun, the moon, and the stars, it is in the fourth heaven, made on the fourth day. And it showed me all the successive goings and all the rays of light and all the movements of the sun and the moon. Its circle and the wheels on which it goes, like a wind going past with very marvelous. I didn't cut and paste the rest of that verse. I don't know where that was it. All right. So this is where it talks about the difference between 6 wings and 12 wings. A lot of this information, these are winds, these are ethereal. They move fast. Some move faster than others. There's definitely speed involved. And in one of the ways the ancients in our text, they talk about it. They talk about 6 wings versus 12 wings, everything, which is, 12 wings is a higher ordered thing, and it can move faster. All right. This is, kind of what they're doing with the language. But there are certain luminaries. So we know there are certain fixed stars. Enoch tells us that there's a part where it says he took them up. He went into the fourth heaven, the sun, moon, and the stars, that whole point. And he was watching all of this. This is Ezekiel. When he looks at them, he sees these wheels within wheels. That's what it's talking about. This whole celestial world that is constantly moving, and they're just like dancing, going in and out of each other's orbits, and oh my gosh, it's huge. But we can watch it, clock it, calculate it. We can make great. It's a clock. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. They've been put there. And you can figure out your, the solstices, or for way down the road and way in the past. I mean, because it's fixed. All right. They are fixed in their cycles, in their rotations, in their orbits, in their spheres. All right. It talks about there in Enoch, 2 Enoch 11, it talks about its passage and return are accompanied by 4 great stars. See, so this is where I think that these 4 great stars are talking about 4 elemental influences, states of being, living entities, other dimensions that are all part of the sun's apparatus, the sun's solar system. It's the sun. It's got things that are happening around it. It's a little unity that goes on up there. All right. These 4 planets. So if you take 4 stars, these 4 great stars, plus 1, the moon, you get 5. And if you add the sun, you get 6. So you do get, because again, in this classification system, when you understand your Sephiroth tree of life and how Abhi is describing, one thing you'll realize that the world of physicality is not part of the world of the heavens. There's 6. So in other words, what I'm trying to say, and this agrees with Enoch, you have a sun and you have these 4 stars, including the moon, that they're all kind of revolving around each other. And see, the planets revolving around each other. These are elemental states. I don't even know how to describe it, but they have names. In some other texts I have read, that's where you get the word Chronos in the mythology, and Aphrodite and Ares, and I forget what the 4th one is. Many different mythologists have given them names, all right? But these also correspond to this concept of the air and fire and I forget what the four are even here in my mind. These things are also referred to as angelic orders, all right? So I guess what I'm trying to say, the heavens are a little solar system, and these planets that we're seeing, they're not necessarily the planets, but they are part of this thing, and they have influences. They are great stars. They're great luminaries that are part of it. They're not as great as the sun, the moon. There's a whole story about how the moon diminished yourself. That's a whole separate issue. But you do have these other fours. 4 + 1 + 1 = 6. Okay, which is in Kabbalah. The Zohar are this whole world of the heavens, and then you come down, lo and behold, and you have this last thing. It's called the world of Asiyah, the boots on the ground, Malkut. Shekinah. It's called the lower. The great sea. There's just so many words. They do have a separation between the heavens and the earth, and that's what we need to have, because those 7 are up here. They're doing their thing up here. They're moving over the surface, and they're also, and this part truthfully I don't really have it 100% figured out, because how the sun, it goes under the earth, and it must influence the lower 7 netherworlds. All right, there must, so we don't need to make the earth a round spinning ball. We need to understand the earth is a dimension in the middle of the 7, the heavens, and then the netherworlds. Okay, I think that's the best way to understand it. That's where I am so far. But on the day 4, see, because there's a verse that talks about the 4 corners of the earth and the pillar. You cannot look at these words or on the surface, like it's describing just a flat physical dimension, and then it isn't including. These words are including all of the other dimensions in themselves at the same time, because I will tell you how I can prove it to you. This is the way things are set up. This is what it means to be, when it talks about how I have the glory. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, this glory. There's a principle here that you always have. So in other words, the higher up you go in essence, or in the world, let's say you go up to the world of absolute, and let's just say that's this. It's just pure light and light. It's just the total amount. It's everything. All right, the nucleus, the first seed, everything. It goes inside. As it comes down, it doesn't, like all these different worlds don't travel down. They travel one inside the other. So that one goes inside of this world of dimensions. I've done this before. This is the best way for me to explain it. That dimension, world, universe, it goes inside of this one. They're all contained one inside the other. This one is going, so we have 4. I have 1, 2, 3, and this is the final. All right, here. All right. So this is how it travels up and down, in and out. And then you have to have dimensions of north, south, east, and west, so you kind of know where you are on the rest of this thing. I guess I'm just trying to piece this together the best I can. But let me say this last part about the lower. I've got 2 more things. So this is what I was going to share. Let me just do this one last time. This is Tycho's, what he did, which, if you will notice, this is his sun. All right, so this is it's because this is how wheels within wheels, spheres within spheres, movement within movement, and in the movement are living beings and living dimensions. All right, so you would have a sun in the middle, and it's got its little, these 4 stars, these 4 luminaries, and the moon that are going around it. It's all one little subset. And then you have the earth, which is there, but that top subset revolves over the surface of the earth, but somehow it is also going under the earth. All right. This is really what the texts are telling us. This is what Tycho figured out. And this is what I think most accurately is telling us. All right. Along with a lot of other information. So in Second Enoch, he says, so I understand on the fourth day, I was going into the four corners. They're not corners. That's such a bad translation. I have a whole teaching on this. This is where we get into a lot of this concept of the four and its classifications. You have four corners, four rivers, four elementals, four archangels. You have four worlds. You have four dimensions. You have four heavens in here. These are really, you have these four luminaries I just talked about from Enoch. This is really important. And these can influence every single world. It's always worlds within worlds. So, they're really four principalities. They're really the four cardinal points. This is another thing talking about the four archangels. See, this is where there's so much information. These four, quote unquote, four stars with the sun and the moon that make up the heaven and really make up the lower heavens. Because like I said, there's a high heaven, all right? This is what is going on, all right? And Yahweh even tells us, and again in Enoch, that one of the angels, probably you will, told me, oh, no. It says in verse 24, in chapter 24, it says, all that I created from non-being, invisible things from invisible, I alone used to go about in the invisible things. Now this is Elohim talking, all right? And I conceived the thought of placing foundations and of creating visible creation. So this word again, foundations, and I think next week what I'm going to do is flesh out a little bit more some of these words again. Yabal, you know, the Hebrew word, the word eretz for earth, firmaments. There's two words. There's a whole teaching which I didn't even get to on the word firmament. The firmament with the foundations comes from a root word system that takes up about 8 or 9 Strong's words. It's a very large kind of root, 3-letter root system word that encompasses quite a lot. It is the word foundation. All right. So all these things need to be fleshed out much more from their kind of the Hebrew theology that is in these words. So here you do have Elohim saying that he was in the high heaven. He created this whole, lowering of himself. They talk about it. He's lowering himself more and more into a place of physicality, his world, so that our souls can come forth for his reasons, whatever, for this time of physicality. And in Enoch 33:31, it says, Yahweh, I, Yahweh, am self-eternal, not made with hands and without change. My thought is my counsel, my wisdom and my word are made, and my eyes observe all things, how they stand, now and forevermore. So, I think it's kind of, it's this esoteric understanding that is in our text is, to me, where we have to go to get, a really good answer, to give an answer for the hope that is in us, especially when these aliens come back and people are going to wonder, we're going to know where they came from. We're going to have to really have an answer for the world. On that note, shalom, blessings, and I will see you here, there, or in the air, as they say.